Welcome, friends, to Inks and Issues, a podcast where we do in-depth discussions on a single comic book. I'm Jonah Gregory, the new guardian of Urza.
And I'm Kieran, and I guess I don't actually know if that was a comic book reference. So I'm just going to say I'm the last son of New Zealand.
Oh, okay,
that's where I'm from.
That was a reference to the comic we read this week.
Oh, see that? Already that gives you a little taste of exactly how much I understood what we're reading this week.
This is quite the book. This is episode 2, and today we are going to be discussing Mirror, Volume 1, The Mountain. But before we get into that, Kieran, how you doing?
Pretty good. I'm good, but tired.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been working 9 days in a row, which was super fun by the time I got to day number 9. But I'm really looking forward to my 4-day weekend now.
Are you coming off of day 9, or did you have today off?
This is the first day off.
Okay.
This is the first day off today. Yeah. So no, I just spent all day working on geekly video projects and my own other podcasts.
Yeah.
And
so you want to
sleeping.
So for Geekly, maybe you want to tell people what your new job is, besides when we get back to doing more comic reviews. Coming soon, I promise.
True.
I promise. I have stuff in the works.
Yeah,
for that.
I promise as well. Oh my god. So I'm now the video. I don't know what person. I guess
senior video editor. You're the only one. You can just say whatever the position is. So
true. Yeah, I am the senior chief executive video producer and manager for Geekly Inc. So I'm just organizing the Geekly Inc. YouTube channel and editing up the streams and doing snazzy intros and outros and stuff, and just making sure all that good ass content is well organized and ready to be consumed by voracious 12-year-olds.
Yeah, I was excited to see that. I didn't even know you did video stuff. So when I think Tim said "Oh, we found our guy. It's Kieran." I'm like, "Are you sure about this Kieran guy? I don't know."
Yeah. I'm pretty shifty. But yeah, so no, that's actually been it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun doing something that's not news. Yeah. So it was yeah. So to answer your question in a word, I'm good.
Awesome. Have you been reading anything? Comics, maybe?
Yes, I have actually. I have just been smashing through my last couple of weeks of subs from the shop, including the first large DC crossover for the DC Rebirth that they've been doing, which was Justice League versus Suicide Squad, which was good. But you'll notice there was really heavy pause.
I was going to say you didn't seem super confident.
No, it was good. I did enjoy it, but it was really stupid. It was really kind of you could imagine a whole bunch of writers sitting around and someone being like, "Hey, you know what's cool? Justice League. You know what else is cool? Suicide Squad. Let's put them both in the same thing and make them fight." And that was pretty much the entire logic behind it.
I thought you were going to say Justice League Power Rangers when you said stupid, but no, I haven't started it, but I am going to, because you know me, I like a good crossover, and by good I mean dumb.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, speaking of crossovers, I also read Green Lantern Star Trek, which is a Green Lantern crossover with the J.J. Abrams Star Trek universe.
Why did they pick that one?
Well, see, I didn't realize when I pre-ordered it. I just saw Green Lantern Star Trek, and I was like, let's go. And apparently this is the second Green Lantern Star Trek crossover. But
maybe that's why they went that direction.
Yeah. I don't actually understand, but I just finished the second issue the other day, and I don't think I'll be picking up the third and the fourth one, to be honest. Yeah. They're not good. Yeah. So, any Star Trek or Green Lantern fans out there thinking about picking that up, I really wouldn't recommend it.
If it were any other Star Trek, I might. That just kind of reminded me, one of the, I thought, pretty clever things they did in the Star Trek Doctor Who crossover was there's an intro, I think maybe it's the first first issue of it, where it's original series and it's the Fourth Doctor, and then when it jumps to the main plot line, it's Next Gen and it's the whatever the current Doctor was at the time. I think it was, gosh, was that? I think it was a David Tennant, but I would have to check. It's been a long time since I read that one, but it was a pretty clever way of doing it, where it's like both timelines had moved forward by the time they met up again. And of course, it was a Borg meets Cybermen because they're basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was dumb.
How could you do anything else?
Yeah, it was dumb and cheesy, but, you know, it was fun. I'm a fan of crossovers. I don't know why, but someone on Twitter... do you remember?
Yeah, crossovers are cool.
Someone on Twitter was asking what our first books were. And I think yours was pretty much what we talked about last episode about Green Lantern, or what we spent our money on, what we bought ourselves. And I was trying to think back, and I'm pretty sure that my first comic single issue I bought myself was a Spider-Ham book, which just proves how I like stupid things, I guess.
So Jonah, how have you been?
Oh, man, it's been a couple weeks. We've been trying to record. Scheduling's been tough. My kids have been sick off and on. I've been sick a little bit today, and I ended up taking today just to try and recuperate a little bit. I'm feeling pretty good right now, though. So you're dealing with that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing too exciting. Just kind of dealing with family stuff, which, you know, that's pretty normal when you got kids in the house. Especially, well, we did have snow. That was interesting. Like, we get snow off a little bit up here, but it was like Monday morning, woke up with 6 inches of snow and school was canceled.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I wasn't expecting that. So we had 2 days of Cora being off, and then today her being too sick to go. So she's missed most of this week. So,
damn.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember school when I was young. Whatever.
Yeah, it's kindergarten. She'll be fine. Yeah. She's learning to read and all that fun stuff, you know.
Have you been reading anything particularly interesting lately?
I have been reading fan translations of the next part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Part 4, the show wrapped up at the end of last whatever anime seasons. I don't know how those work. Talk to Kim and Ben and Vince. I don't know how any of that stuff works, but
transformation sequence now available on the Geekly and Podcast Network.
There you go. So I was pointed in the direction of where to read really good fan translations of the next series. So I've been working through that a little bit, and it continues to uphold the name of being bizarre. The part 5 is all about like the mafia in Italy, but it's all these young dudes with superpowers that are in various gangs within mob. They're like all trying to move up the ranks. So it's they all do their own thing, which I definitely appreciate with that series. Like every series within that does its own thing. So we definitely will be covering some JoJo's later.
Yeah. There's one of those series that I keep meaning to pick up and have a read of and, you know, see what it's all about. But I just, you know, too many comics.
Yeah, parts 1 and 2 are done in the newly translated English versions, which are these really nice hardcover editions. So I have all of part 1. I need to get part 2, and part 3 I had been pre-ordering as it came out, which 3 is the one most people are familiar with, where they introduce stands, and it's the one from like the 90s that had the OVAs, Stardust Crusade. It's the version of JoJo like most people that know nothing about the show would see and go, oh, I know that's from JoJo. So that's just volume 2 literally came out like 2 days ago here. Like it just came in the mail. So I mean, those I've seen in the show, but I was interested to see if the manga was any different. And it's the new version of the show actually sticks really close to that. So if you have a Crunchyroll subscription, or I think even Hulu has them. So depending on your region, you know, I'm sure you can find a way to watch the show. I highly recommend it. I also
I think it's on Crunchyroll. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. That's where I've been watching it because they get it before Hulu. There's a delay of a couple weeks, I think, before Hulu has the newest episode, and so I caught up on Hulu and was like, nope, sorry, got to get Crunchyroll now.
Yeah,
liked it too much.
I can't even get Hulu. So
oh yeah, and that's what I was wondering. I'm like, Hulu is one of those the region locking is pretty bad. I've heard. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah. For Cowboy Bebop and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, they are, because of like rights issues in New Zealand, I can't get them on Crunchyroll. So I then have to buy a subscription to Anime Lab, which is a New Zealand Australian anime streaming service, just so I can watch Cowboy Bebop and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Wow, that's unfortunate. I'm also looking for, if anyone can point me in the direction of any anime service that specializes in old stuff, like 70s and 80s and maybe early 90s stuff, or most of the 90s stuff, I would be very happy, because like nobody seems to carry that older stuff, which is of course the stuff I found as a teenager and was super into, because I'm old. But other than that, I had just started right before we were recording. I finished a second read through of Mirror that we'll be talking about in just a second, and I'm like, I wanted to do something else, so I grabbed the Rocket Raccoon. They had started a series before all the crazy reboots were happening, so I have no idea where this fits in with any kind of timeline, if at all. But it's his solo series, and a friend of mine who has his own games and comic shop gave me a deal on the volume 1 and 2 hardcovers. So I had yet to crack those open, so I'm like, well, this will be a good palate cleanser before we record. And I got maybe like 7 or 8 pages in, and I think I laughed on almost every single page, if not every page. So I'm really digging it so far.
Okay, wow.
It's very comedy focused and lots of action. I mean, just to set the stage, like it starts with Rocket rescuing a princess, and then he's on a date with a different princess, and they're seeing Groot wrestling a giant slime monster in like a traditional looking wrestling ring. And this is in the first like 3 pages. And to make it a solo book, of course, Groot gets shattered within like the first 5 pages of this book, so that he's just carrying around the talking splinter that keeps saying I am Groot already. So it's pretty good so far.
Yeah, wow. No, sounds good.
Pretty action packed. So yeah, I'm not far enough to say whether it's good overall, but what little I've read is really funny. So that's enough to keep me going. All right. So do we want to get into Mirror the Mountain?
Yeah. The Mirror of the Mountain.
Okay, so this is the plot synopsis from the back of the book. The mage scientists of the Synchronia have terraformed a portion of an asteroid, a tiny fragment of a once lush world. An unexpected side effect arises in the spontaneous sentience of the animals sent to test the environmental conditions. Mirror the Mountain is the story of what happens next. And what a story. So, okay, so here's straight out of the gate. I think both of us read this, and neither of us knew what the heck was going on after the initial read-through.
Nope.
To be fair, we both had digital copies that we got from the Humble Bundle.
Yes,
so
the Image Humble Bundle.
So there was no that description from the back of the book until I had finished the book.
Yeah.
I think that would have helped.
In retrospect... Yeah, it would have definitely helped.
Yeah. So I also found, after reading it, in the very back, there's some mini comics which didn't help explain things too much, but there were descriptions of the different character types, because there's kind of like character classes almost in this story. And,
yeah.
There's also breakdowns of all the major characters.
Timeline.
Yes, there's a timeline. There's a breakdown of all the like major characters. They have little character bios, and I'm like, man, this should have been front loaded with some of this information, because one of the things that makes this book so confusing is there's a 0 year, which is when the colony kind of first starts, because they're colonizing this asteroid, like I mentioned in the description.
Yeah.
The main story takes place 35 years later, which is the present day in the comic. And they keep flashing back everything in between, including before they discover the asteroid, which is like year -15, according to the story.
This is all stuff that while you're reading, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And it only kind of all comes together at the end?
Correct.
Sort of?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
but anyway, so
it's broken up into chapters. So chapter 1, each chapter has a little summary. So chapter 1 summary is a story about the mage scientists of the Synchronia and the sentient animals of Urza Colony. So we start with the main character, whose name is somewhere in here.
Ivan. It says right here.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. So it opens with Ivan, and he appears to be a young boy. This is Urza Colony Year 5, and he's got this little, black and white dog, and it's kind of that classic, boy and his dog. Dog turns into a strange girl dog hybrid, and then they run away together because they're gonna steal the girl dog hybrid, and then she runs away, and then they decide to hunt her down, and that's the end of the prologue. And make of that information what you will.
Yes. So we find out as the story goes, it jumps ahead back to the present day. There's these guardians, which they don't get into. A lot of this stuff is hinted at early. I actually reread it today before we recorded because I was very confused the first time. And they do a lot of stuff that's setting up for later, but it's so vague when you first see it that you don't even know that it's setting up for later. That's my one problem with it. So there's these initial animals that are now considered guardians, and they were sent to... I have to skip ahead or this makes no sense, so I apologize. We're gonna have to jump around. So major spoilers, but I assume you either have already read it or don't care if you're listening to this. So they colonize this asteroid, right? And to make sure it's habitable, they send animals to it. And these 5 animals are all different species. There's a bear, there's a raccoon or something. I don't even remember, but
I think it's like a raccoon, a whale, a bear, and there's like a deer and a wolf or something.
Yes, that sounds right.
That sounds right.
So after they've been here for a little while, they start to develop intelligence beyond, like, at a human level and possibly beyond, and also some form of, like, telepathy or some sort of clairvoyance of some kind. And then humans have tried to figure out what the heck's going on with them, what made them so special. We jump back to, in the book, in order, not knowing anything about this yet, to
having absolutely no idea about any of these things.
Yes, there's a character who is a mouse or rat that's been turned human by Ivan, that is talking to this old guardian who's a bear, who's kind of the one that everyone looked to as being this wise, amazing leader, even though he didn't really talk much, because he was always the one that was kind of weary of doing anything with the humans, kind of didn't want to have anything to do with them, with good cause, because of course the humans are assholes, because why wouldn't they be?
Obviously, because you can't possibly have a story where the humans are good.
Yes.
That would be ridiculous.
And he's in captivity. They are still trying to figure out what makes them special. Like, they didn't make them this way like they did with all the other hybrids, but they don't understand what the heck is going on with these guardians. There's only a couple of them left at this point. I believe there's only the 2 at this point left, the bear and the whale.
The bear and the whale, or whatever. That pops up later, and
and he basically is ready to die, the guardian is, but he can't die, but he's too weak to leave. They want to help him escape, but he's like, it's not gonna happen, I can't even walk. So
yeah. You can try, but I ain't going nowhere.
They also introduce a character called Finks, who is like this little talking cat that is talking like the other animals are, but he still just looks like a cat. Whereas all the other ones walk on 2 legs and act human. There's hints that there's already been a few rebellions where the humans and the animals got in a big war. There's a lot of backstory going on here that is not set up properly. Oh, I wouldn't say not properly.
No.
It's just, this seems like a kind of book that was set up for rereading multiple times.
Yeah, there's a lot of backstory and a lot of exposition dumped in this first part that is almost kind of written from an in-world perspective.
Yes.
In that it assumes that you already know everything that you know by the end of the book. So,
Right.
as you say, when you go back and read through it the second time, I'm sure it's fantastic, and you go, "Oh wow, hey, that's really interesting," and that's and that's setting up for that. But just the first time, you just don't understand. You don't get it.
Yeah, for sure. There's also a
Which is
minotaur
unfortunate.
named Aldebaran, who is his own unique being. So even though he looks like one of the hybrids, he's actually not a hybrid. He was born of a human woman and changed by the asteroid. There's also a grudge, which is like a mythical spectral being that is protecting Ivan. There is so much going on that it doesn't set up at first.
Yeah. And sorry, and should also be pointed out that the grudge looks like the dog woman from the very start of the so they look similar, and that'll be important.
That is a point of contention later.
Yeah. Is it important? Is it explained? Who knows?
It's kind of explained. So the dog lady's name is Sina, and she's basically been taken away to become the next guardian. They're hoping, but she's like a hybrid, so everyone's like, is that even a thing that can happen? We don't know. But she was kind of leading these rebellions from the animal people, and so she's not on good terms with either side at this point, and just kind of left because they were like, hey, go on this mission and seek out the guardian, and maybe you'll be the new guardian. We don't know. So she just kind of takes off for 10 years or something and vanishes.
So basically, we've got Ivan, and the kind of the implication is that he is sort of staying here and he's doing his research on the animal-human hybrids and kind of the whole guardian process and the asteroid itself. And so he then is paid a visit by the Minotaur, Aberdeen or whatever his name is, and his
master slash dad,
his master slash dad, yeah. And he basically says, like, Ivan, you got to pick it up. We want to find out about these guardians sooner rather than later. And there's also a flashback to when oh my god, I can never remember her name. The
Cena
lady. Cena, thank you. I was going to say Cena, but I didn't believe in myself.
Yeah.
So there you go. Lesson number 1 from this book: believe in yourself. So there's like a flashback to what is implied as like another animal rebellion, and Cena is trying to convince Ivan to come with her, and he turns his back on her and refuses to go with her. And so that's kind of the end of his little bit, and so I think the kind of the implication is Ivan is there not necessarily of free will, but he feels like he can't really go anywhere else.
Yeah, he's an incredibly talented mage scientist, they call them, because it's a combination of some sort of crazy sci-fi science, but also magic. And the magic seems to have started because of the asteroid, is the implication.
Yes, and then he gives something to the mouse rat, and he basically tells him to go and kill the guardian. Yeah, and then he does.
Yep.
and he just straight up does it. So he kills the guardian, and he steals the cat away, and they run out into the middle of the forest. And
yeah, I mean, it was basically assisted suicide. I mean, it was
essentially
the guardian was like, yeah, give me that stuff, I'm done. He said he wanted to help him escape, but even the guardian was like, it's not going to happen, there's no way out for me. So but they wanted the experiments on him to end, because obviously the humans in charge nobody trusts, because why would you after all this stuff?
Why would you ever trust the humans?
Exactly.
Kazban, or whatever his name is, and his son Abba Ding Dong basically find out that Ivan ordered the assisted suicide of the bear, and there's kind of this thing where basically Kazban he says, I don't have time for this, and so it's kind of like, there's this ongoing conflict with the animals, and so it's, the research that they're doing is very military in nature, and they need to discover how to make more guardians because they've got to fight the animals. And that is the end of chapter 2. So a lot of exposition, a
Yes,
lot of backstory.
Yeah, so chapter 2, the summary here says, deep in the stars, strange creatures inhabit the lands of Urza asteroid. Zun, a lab rat, runs away from the Asagila in a quest to end the experiments behind its walls. We get a look into some of the past things that have happened with the rebellions and some of these camps. They seem to have kept a lot of the animal people hybrids in. It shows a lot of battles and shows Cena like back when she was on good terms with the Guardians, trying to get the bear to fight with them.
Yeah, and she's basically saying like, I want to do this my way, and there's kind of the implication that the bear is sort of going like, well, I think what you have in mind is too far, and she basically sort of ends their conversation by saying, yeah, well, whatever, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. Mm-hmm. And so they skip ahead to a week later, and the alarms are going off.
Right. And so we get to see Zun when she's still a regular rat or mouse, lab mouse, I guess.
Some form of rodent.
Yeah. And Cena is attacking the building. She meets the Grudge that looks exactly like her face to face and is not super happy about this situation. The Grudge doesn't even realize that she's basically a sentient curse, and was like, "Oh, yeah. I'm just this fake thing made after this person that you're friends with. Now I'm pissed at you too."
Yeah.
And then there's a lot more exposition about what's going on, and we find out that Ivan is still wants to help. Basically, he's the human that's wanting to help the hybrids. So we see that he's willing to basically put himself and his career on the line to, for anything for Cena, because that was his dog before it became his dog, who is a lady that's his friend.
That classic story. Yeah, so he and Cena basically float up to the top of the kind of the facility that they're in, and they pass by these kind of human animal hybrid labs.
Right.
And they actually pass through a conversation where Karzan is talking to essentially his superior, and he's saying, the research is going slow, and she's saying, I don't give a shit. We have to find out how to make more Guardians and beat these animals. At the same time, the animals then breach the walls of the facility. They end up on the roof, and
there's a big battle with the Guardian bear. Actually did step up to help them fight, which
I thought this page was really cool.
Yeah,
by the way, the big kind of like 3-4 split of like the battle, and that was a really cool piece of art.
Yeah, we see 1/3 of the page being like the human side with armor and guns, and the middle being the view facing out towards the animals, and then the other side facing in from the other direction with all the animals who have much worse technology on their side. They have some very outdated looking weaponry, guns, but they look pretty banged up, and sticks and swords. But they know that, they comment on the fact that every time they attack, they lose horribly. The humans are why do they keep attacking? They keep losing a ton of people, but they're so persistent. They just keep coming. But we do see that Cena, at this point, still tries to protect Ivan. So that bond is still there. A lot of the story seems to revolve around their relationship, which is obviously complicated when your dog becomes a human. Where do you go from there?
Well, yeah, so essentially it is revealed on the roof that Cena's objective is to kill Kazran, but she's interrupted. She also is stabbed, I believe. So she is essentially spirited out of this facility and taken to where the Guardian is, the last remaining Guardian in the wild, which I believe is a wolf/whale thing. It's never really 100% explained, and then it kind of transforms into the present day, and they're sort of examining the body of the bear, and that is the end of the second chapter.
So is the wolf guardian and the whale the same person transforming between the two forms? That I was never clear on.
I believe so, because there's one panel where the wolf is going into the water. then it's a shadow under the water, and then it's a whale. So I believe that is the case.
Okay.
But this particular kind of end sequence here, in between the two, it's a little bit unclear, a little bit confusing. Looks very nice.
Yes.
But it's just not really that clear.
Right. So that's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3, Lesnick's death mirrors in crimson dreams, bringing back sad memories of the animal rebellion he and Cena led together. So now we're back in the present day. The guardian bear is on the table basically for autopsy. Humans are basically telling Aldebaran that no matter what they do, whenever they examine it, it's just a bear. There's like literally nothing different about it than a regular bear. They cannot find out why. So he's like, I don't care, do the autopsy. We need to know for sure.
Yeah.
And then it jumps back in time again to 17 years ago to Kazbek and his wife, Leah. Is that what was going on there? I mean,
I think
because she's very pregnant. She's also his doctor. She's treating some weird ass space plant growing out of him, which they don't explain till later. She is diagnosed, or not diagnosed, but they basically say, you know, she needs to have a cesarean in the next couple weeks because they don't know what's going on with this baby. It seems normal, but they don't know if it's normal, really. Ivan kind of suspects something might be up. And, of course, 5 minutes later, Aldebaran is born, but not, like, in a gross birth sequence. Like, basically, he transformed into the Minotaur, like, right at his birth and unraveled his mother into, like, crazy
unraveled
plants.
His mom, yeah.
Because there's a lot of the magic is tied to, like, plant imagery, where it's showing kind of a parallel between him and also the birth of Aldebaran and also whatever is going on with Kazbek. And then it immediately jumps back. So this is just a flashback he is having during whatever else is happening. So, oh man, we picked a doozy.
I remember you messaging me and saying, I'm not sure if we can do an episode on this, and me saying, nah, it's cool, it's fine. Now that we're actually trying to describe the story, I'm just like, oh shit, what have I done?
Yeah. So, this may be our most difficult one. We may pick some easy ones for the next few episodes. So we flash back, or we're now in the present with Kazbek.
Yes.
It shows him constantly being injected for keeping whatever that plant thing that he's dealing with under control. Is this where he sends him on the quest?
Yes, it is. As Bernamanan meets up with Ivan, and he's basically like, we need to find the Sphinx. And we also need to find Cena as well, because they're really important. And I've been asked to find them both. And Ivan's like, well, I want to find Cena. You want to find the cat. The cat is with the rat, and the rat is with Cena.
Right.
So I feel like we can come to a mutually beneficial agreement here. And so they set out off into the wilderness together.
Right. And we see what Cena's up to, still talking with the whale. And trying to figure out what she
It's a wolf at this point.
It goes back and forth. So I think you were right. It is the same character. I for some reason didn't quite pick up on that, even after two read-throughs of this book. So maybe I'm just dumb. But we kind of catch up with her struggle with trying to become a guardian, and that seems to, so far, be kind of a fruitless endeavor, even after years of training with the whale wolf. Yeah. So
the wolf.
Yeah, we go back to Zun and Finks looking for Cena and kind of wandering through the woods, and Aldebaran meets up with them and basically tells them, oh, this forest is magical and you've been going in circles all since your journey started, essentially. So you need me more than I need you. So but Finks is with him, which was part of his mission. So they meet up. Zun doesn't really trust him because he's the lackey of Kazbek, basically.
He's with the man.
Yeah, so he eats this magic thing that Ivan gave him, not really knowing what it's gonna do. Just he was told, hey, if you ever need me, eat this thing. And it gives him a third eye, which allows Ivan to see what he sees and talk to him. And to Zun, it actually feels like Ivan is like right there with him, not just talking like in his head or anything. Which I thought that the way they illustrated that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it kind of flashes between the different rooms, and you see one panel like from Zun's perspective, like looking up at Aldebaran, which was pretty cool. Just showing like, oh, this guy is like 10 feet tall. That's crazy.
There's a lot of like really interesting like magic and science concepts in the in the story, including like the whole third eye thing. Yeah, just I wish there was a second volume to kind of expand on some of these things a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he eats the third eye. Essentially, they decide to go off on a grand quest together to try and find Cena and bring her back to wherever. Of course, we flash back to the past, year 25. And I believe this is just after the rebellion. I think it's implied that Aberdeen, or whatever his name is the one who saved Cena and like took her out into the forest and kind of gave her up to the whale wolf. And
so he kind of knows where he's going because of this, and leads them, like their journey is over, but kind of before it starts at that point. Like they kind of skip ahead maybe to where they're pretty much already there.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, let's go on a quest, and we're here.
Yeah, it's like, oh, good thing I have been here already. So I mean, it shows they needed him. They needed to team up. They needed a reason to get all these characters together.
Yeah.
And we end with them meeting up. They find Cena, and they're all just kind of staring at each other, and that's the end of chapter 3.
Yeah.
So that brings us to chapter 4. What did you have thoughts on that?
Based on your first read, what were your thoughts at the time?
I had no idea. Like, I was reading this like on a Saturday afternoon and was just completely baffled. I had no idea where they were going with any of this. As you can tell, we're having trouble even explaining what's going on, and I've read it again. I read it hours ago for a second time, and I'm still having trouble bringing anyone up to speed as to what is happening in this book. I'm not even, well, we'll get into final judgments later. But let's move on, because we'll get there. There's only a couple more chapters left, and then we can discuss overall thoughts. Chapter 4, the sad Minotaur reaches the frozen lake and makes a plea on behalf of all the lives in the colony. And then we flash back to year 15, where humans are fighting some kind of crazy space war that they haven't mentioned yet.
Nope. I thought this is such a weird tone shift.
Yeah.
It was like this sort of fantasy, sci-fi, animal sort of conflict kind of thing on a planet, and then space battles.
Yes, but it does set up that there are these magic seeds, which all tie back into the plant stuff, and there's actually plant people or beings that have no concept of how humans think or function, and they don't even know like how to react to humans. They're just like, why would you act this way? Like, why would these be the choices you make towards other sentient beings?
Literally make no sense.
Yeah. And that humans are so contradictory in their actions and towards other species, and how that their answer is pretty much always violence. We see that this is why the plant issue that Kazbek has been dealing with has actually happened in this era, where one of the plant creatures essentially explodes him in half and then rebuilds his body with the crazy plant power. So he's kind of his own hybrid in a weird way. Like, he doesn't really have control over what's happening with his body, and the drugs, the injections he's been taking, of what allowed him to keep his human form without the plants taking complete control over him. But it also implies that that other being is still kind of in his head, because they do have conversations occasionally. So I don't think they clarify the motives of the other creature. Like, was he doing this to understand humans, or I just don't. I didn't quite follow what his motivation for this was.
It was an interesting sequence in that it does set up the plant kind of concept for later. The language is quite ambiguous, and I still wasn't sure by the end what the reason for the plant creature doing its thing. I mean, maybe we're not supposed to fully understand.
That's very
because
possible.
It's such an alien. It's such an alien being kind of thing. It was quite cool though. I really like the design of the plant creature, like when it's standing in front of him, flanked by the smoke on either side. It's a really cool design.
Yeah. Well, we flash forward to current day, which is year 35. I don't know if we've mentioned that, but we probably have. And
it's an important detail.
Yes, Kazbek is now talking to one of these beings and asks why, or aren't you tired of humans? And it basically just says, I find humans endlessly entertaining. So it's almost like they're just curious as to what humans will do with all this new magic and technology that's been happening. And this is where they set up that asteroid is actually from a sentient planet that is still somehow alive and sentient, even though they've colonized it, and who knows what its motives are, if any, or if it's completely benevolent. Like, they don't know. They can't communicate with it. It just exists and influences these. It made the Guardians. Why? Who knows? Because it felt like it, I guess.
It's a planet.
Yeah, and we go back to the group that was questing earlier with Finks and Cena and Ivan. Or no, not Ivan. Sorry, that's the human. Zun and Aldebaran, and they're discussing like what they should be doing next. They're trying to find basically the next Guardian. They don't know who it's going to be. Everyone kind of assumes it's going to be Cena. So there's a lot of back and forth of them discussing what's happening with that whole situation.
Also, Zun confesses that she, or he, I'm not entirely sure, killed the Bear Guardian.
Right.
And Cena is very much not happy about that. And at the sort of the end of their kind of conversation, they discuss the Sphinx, the cat. Aberdeen, whatever his name is, says that Kazbek believes that the Sphinx might actually be the next Guardian, not Cena.
Right.
Because her genes are in constant mutation. And then we get a nice little flashback where they talk about Aberdeen, or whatever his name is, his birth, in that he was a human, and then he was corrupted by the asteroid itself.
Right.
And just without even realizing, he just disassembles his mother when he sort of gains, full consciousness, because, he has this this power within the, due to the asteroid. And so just, completely rips her apart and doesn't even realize. And then we flick back to the present. And then there's sort of this weird kind of shift on the asteroid. Like, everything sort of kind of happens at once. There's just all this sudden shift on the surface, and everyone's sort of falling over and kind of yelling, and the Sphinx, the cat, is now a Guardian.
Yes. So Finks turns into Sphinx, which is the new Guardian, but she makes it apparent that she's not a Guardian for this world. She's actually a Guardian for the next world, and that this world's about to be completely destroyed.
Yes.
So everyone is like, what the hell's going on? Because they thought it was going to be kind of a new era of the hybrids having a new leader and rising up and having their own place in the world now. And it turns out she's basically the harbinger of doom to everybody, like both sides.
Yep.
And not out of any like malicious or evil place, just she's very like, no, this is what I was made for, so too bad, I guess. But we find the plant being is the one that triggered all of this. And when they confront this being and ask, like, why would you do this? It's like, oh, I did it for me. I guess I learned how to be human and be selfish, because that's their big takeaway from humans was they're always looking out for their best interests. They don't care about the animal hybrids that they created. They don't care about the Guardians. They clearly don't care about the planet, because why would they? So it's a real Captain Planet situation. Instead of bringing pollution down to zero, they just decided to blow the whole thing up and start over.
Yep. It's one way to do it.
So it's a lot of introspective questioning what it means to be human. It's a very Star Trek-y couple of pages after that of, is this all that humans are really good for? Is their own selfishness? Which is something I do like in science fiction, is that introspective look at humanity. Most of the rest of this chapter is just kind of everyone realizing that basically everyone is screwed.
We are all going to die.
Yeah, so they need to figure out how to get off of the planet now.
And the animals do not fancy their chances.
No.
Because they feel that the humans are just going to save themselves, which is pretty likely, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So the chapter ends, as you say, with everyone kind of realizing, well, we are going to die.
Yeah.
and we need to get out of here.
And that brings us to chapter 5, which is the final chapter in this book. A rat seeks approval. A mage longs for courage. A dog wishes to rest. A shadow urges for matter. A minotaur looks for a reflection. A scientist hopes for redemption. An admiral begs to have chosen wisely. An asteroid is eager to be reborn anew. Where is fairness? The Sphinx answers her own riddle. And that is the summary of chapter 5 given in the book. We flash back again to year 15, where
of course.
we find that Kazbek is just being rebuilt from when he was exploded that first time. They don't even think he's alive because he's basically from the waist down doesn't exist.
A half a person.
Yeah. And he kind of wakes up and starts chatting. So they're like, oh,
hey guys, what's going on?
I guess he's alive after all. We go to prominent families within this that I don't know have been touched on at all, and other alien beings which have not been introduced yet at all.
This is the first time they show up.
This person.
This part was really cool. Like, I really like this part because it was quite an interesting piece of sci-fi, but it was literally the first time it ever popped up.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard to understand, like the implications. Which, and again, having gone back and sort of had a look at it again, I think essentially Kazbek's superior is part of like a sort of noble family on this planet, in this kind of within this kind of empire, and has committed, a kind of like a great shame. And so essentially they kind of offer her, we'll kind of make this go away, but like you have to do something for us. And she essentially says, no way, Jose, I renounce all of you and I will go and make my own way. And so you kind of then understand that is why they end up going to the asteroid. That's why she's led them there, because she's trying to like get away from the situation on her own home planet.
Right.
It's just kind of a shame that it was never brought up before.
Yeah.
Until now, like the end, like near the end of the book.
There's definitely a hierarchy of command that is hinted at, but not explained very well. And I don't know how you would have fit it in this particular story arc.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of these books that feels like a few volumes in, and then you reread it, it would all come together.
Yeah.
Even though this is a 180-page PDF from Hubble Bundle, about 160 of which was comic, I would say.
Yeah.
So there's some cover galleries and things like that. We get a little bit of explanation of that the asteroid was just this thing they found and started colonizing. That's where you get a little bit of that backstory. But like you said, it's just kind of comes out of nowhere. But I feel that it'll tie in better when the story is complete, maybe, or more complete as it comes out. Because this is a relatively new release. Like, I believe this trade came out last September, so that's only been a few months ago.
Yeah.
And Image, depending on the book, it can be a while between volume releases. So it could be a while before Volume 2 is a thing.
Yeah.
But we go back to the present, and they're trying to organize the evacuation of the asteroid, and all the animals, for obvious reasons, don't trust that the humans aren't just sending them off to die. But they basically say, what choice do we have? It's either die by staying here or trust the humans to get in these jeeps they sent for us and see what happens.
Okay, so basically Cena is sort of debating with herself, and there's a lot of conversations between the characters off in the woods about what it means to be human, what it means to be people, and how they should they trust the humans, and the nature of change, and essentially Cena comes back to the facility and she says that essentially, hey, you know what, the asteroid's trying to kill us, so we're all the same in the end, because we all just want to live. We don't want to, none of us want to die, so we should probably work together now,
right, so
the asteroid doesn't blow up and destroy us all. Which I feel is a good point. I feel she makes a strong argument.
Yeah. So most of the rest of this one is just about them deciding to trust each other to evacuate, and They get off the planet, and then it goes to Kazbek, who is still talking with the plant being and essentially saying that he's ready to die, and it unravels him from where his plant parts were coming out of his arms. And this being is still acknowledges that there's more to humans than maybe it thought, with this person being willing to stay behind and make sure everyone else got off safely. And then we see the Sphinx flying away into a cool mountain, and that's pretty much it. That is the end of the volume. So I am sorry. I am sorry that our explanations were not very clear, but that is how this book was. So I think we'll just skip right into some final thoughts on this book.
Would you like to?
Oh, sure.
Would you like to go first? Jonah, would you recommend this comic?
I would, for people who are into the kind of sci-fi that takes a lot of thought to parse out everything going on. If you're a very lore-heavy fan, I could see enjoying this book. The back of the book, there's a few mini comics, and then it gets into some more explanation of the world and the backstory. And I had read it. I hadn't read the mini comics and things until today. Read those and went, okay, I have to go back and read this entire book again, because now I've read the timeline, I've read the character bios, and as you can tell from the other part, the the play-by-play that we just did, it is still incredibly confusing. I don't know that I would recommend it right now. Maybe when there's more to it and it ties things together, because I never hit that, oh, I get it point for me. And most sci-fi that's really out there, and I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and that's usually the turning point in a book where whether or not I'm going to recommend it is if I hit that point. Like a good example for me, one of my favorite books that is not one I hear pretty much anyone talk about is called The Gone Away World by Nick Harkaway. And it is a weird mix of post-apocalyptic and kung fu movie and weird sci-fi stuff happening and monsters and bombs that destroy everything without leaving any kind of radiation or residue that end up triggering way worse things than anyone could have ever possibly imagined. And there you hit that point in that book where it's very far in, and you hit that, oh my god, this all makes sense now point near the end. And that's why it's one of my favorite books, because it's highly entertaining even though you don't necessarily know what's going on most of the time. And on a second read through, it totally makes sense the entire book. And that's a sign of a well-written sci-fi story, in my opinion. And this book didn't have that in volume 1, so it is a very hard recommendation because of that. What do you think?
It's difficult. To be honest, if you already had it because, you picked up the image bundle or because you picked it up on a whim from your comic book shop, yeah, totally, go give it a read and, see what you think. There are some really interesting ideas in the comic, especially in terms of, that kind of intelligent sci-fi that, talks about what it means to be human, and how, nothing in life is permanent. And there are some really interesting lore concepts as well. I thought the idea of the sentient asteroid and the sentient animals, and the plant creatures, and then this kind of hinted at overarching kind of hierarchy in this kind of distant empire was all really interesting. But just to throw that word in there, but as you say, it's kind of a hard recommendation because there's only one volume at the moment, and as interesting as all of the sort of lore and characters are in the story, I just don't feel like anything in it is really expanded on enough to kind of satisfy me or to allow me to reach that point, as you said, where you go, oh yeah, that's what that is. Reading through it again, there are still bits where I am still wondering, what does that mean? What is this about? And if that, if that's your jam, totally go for it. But I prefer a little more clarity, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
Really good ideas, but until the second volume is out and perhaps there's a little more explanation and context to everything, I don't know if I would recommend it.
Yeah.
To be honest,
maybe we'll revisit it if volume 2 clarifies. Everything to the point where we feel confident enough to go back and fix all of our talking ourselves in circles. I do want to say that the artwork I really did enjoy.
Yes,
it has a very kind of loose watercolor style to it, and I really liked it for that aspect. It did fit the tone of this. The whole book kind of feels like a weird dream, and that's, I think, why it's so hard to explain the plot. When you wake up and you say, oh, I had this really cool dream, and 2 sentences in, you kind of forget what you were trying to explain about why your dream was so cool. And I kind of felt that way about this book. Like, having just reread it, I'm earlier tonight, I'm thinking, I got this. When we record, no problem. And as soon as we started talking, it was gone, like out of my head.
Yeah, the art is really, really good. And there are a lot of really interesting designs on the pages as well. It's not just panel kind of thing. It's, lots of things flowing into each other. And it does have quite a dreamlike quality, as you said. And yeah, it is actually quite a nice book to read in that it is very pleasant to look at. Full points on art. I have to say, I did really like the art.
It should be stated that we picked it 100% based on cover art.
Oh yeah. No, I was literally scrolling through the list of PDFs on the Humble Image Bundle, and the cover caught my eye, and I clicked on it and was like, yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah,
let's go with that.
So yeah, I think I'm looking forward to volume 2 though, because I do want to know what's going on. So to its credit, it did make me want to know how all these weird pieces connect up.
That does have to be said. I would read the second volume if and when it did come out.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode as far as talking about the book goes. We should probably mention we have a Twitter account now at Inks and Issues, which I was surprised existed or wasn't already taken. And inksandissues.com exists, but it basically forwards to our hosting page for now, which is nice because it is a hub where it has all the links to subscribe, iTunes and Android and Google Play and all those fun places. So if there's any other places people want it to be that it isn't, just let us know. Like if there's any other podcasting avenues that people use these days. I'm not super up to date on all that stuff anymore. We will be posting them to a SoundCloud, my SoundCloud for now, because I just had one already. So I put the first issue up there just to help spread the word. So I'll continue to do that if people like using that app. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter. I am at Mr. K_Bennett. Alternatively, if you'd like to listen to some Dungeons and Dragons, I also am the DM for a D&D 5th edition podcast called For Crits and Giggles, which I'm actually recording tonight in about an hour or so that's pretty exciting. And we are at 4CNG Podcast on Twitter if you would like to come and say hello.
All right. I am also at Spambot. I hadn't mentioned that yet, I realize. And we will be back. I know there was a gap between episodes 1 and 2. That was on both of us. There was technical issues, followed by scheduling issues, followed by me getting sick. So I apologize for the delay. We have this one. After this one, we have our first guest host lined up. So we will be reading Rat Queens, all 3 volumes. So that may be a 2-parter. And soon we will also be covering Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the rebooted version from IDW. Volume 1 is Change is Constant. And I don't know how far into that we will cover, but I know we'll at least cover the first story arc, which is issues 1 through 5. Unfortunately, that's all of Volume 1 and the first issue of Volume 2. And with that, we will see you next time.
Bye.